The Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
The Andy Luke and Marie Football Machine.
Autobots, transform! I like this kind of party!
Straight cash, homie.
Starts now.
Well, nevertheless.
We're rolling. I'm healthy now.
Good. Welcome back to the Underdog for another Zone Coverage Football Machine on the Zone Coverage Podcast Network. I'm your not so long host, Andy Carlson, Andy Carlson Show on the Twitter machine. And I have equity. More equity than if you could name me one famous alumni of Loyola Chicago. Just one.
Sister Jean.
Besides her.
My brother in a year, I think.
He said famous.
He will be. He will be.
Someone, I forget who it was. It was like The Comeback or something. Found a picture of Stanley from The Office. In real life, the Leslie Baumgartner, whatever his name is, he went to Loyola Chicago, and they found like an old picture of him.
Is that kind of famous?
Yeah, that they've actually used on the show, like Stanley with the afro.
Amazing.
Yeah. So he's in. They got Leslie.
All right.
Yeah.
There you go.
List of Loyola University Chicago people. Keep going. I'm just going to look at
What
it.
if they actually win?
I mean, it could. No, the big thing that could happen is you look at the big three markets, right? LA, UCLA basketball is big. New York and Chicago really don't have a team that
George
they rally
House.
behind. Wow.
What's he done lately? He's got a cheap team.
John York.
Anyways.
Really? Huh.
If Loyola Chicago becomes Chicago's team, that would be nuts, right? Over Northwestern, over Illinois. What's wrong with Loyola DePaul? What's wrong with Loyola Chicago?
8 people attend that school.
My brother is one of them, though. He's a med student.
Bob Newhart. Jerry Harkness.
But think about it. There's
I
not
think
that
that's a
many.
decent list.
There's not that many
This
Duke.
isn't bad.
Like Duke doesn't have a ton of people there.
Yeah,
Anyways, it's a football show.
Is it though? Is it? Is it really? Listen to hour one. Speaking of football, we did a 7-round mock draft on the Fans Speak on the Clock. It was our Vietnam. It really was. But we got through. We got an amazing haul. And big thanks to Kyle Krabs and DT Scouting for sending us up with that big board. Sexy time. So listen to that. And we got open phone lines. We got some tour questions. We got Arif's Analytic of the Week. We got Luke's Go Get Your Guys, etc. Let's open up with... let's open the phone lines. Yeah.
Oh, and Jerry Harkness.
Yeah, that guy.
Harknesses.
Yeah. Luke, hate to put you on the spot, but
Sure.
Let's fire up with a Go Get Your Guy.
GGYG. This will be short and sweet. We talked about him last week. I talked about him with our boy Steve, who called in. Quentin Meeks.
Anyway.
Cornerback. Anyway, Stanford. I've raved about this cornerback class, and it's one of the reasons I banged the table for Josh Jackson when he was still sitting there. I'm telling you, somebody's going to fall in the Vikings' lap at 30. Whether they choose to pull the trigger on a cornerback at 30 remains to be seen. Depends on how highly they have him ranked. But Josh Jackson's a good idea. It gives you a good example of how deep this class is. Quentin Meeks, cornerback Stanford, he's the big-bodied, physical guy. 6'2", 200. I know over the last 2 years, 5 interceptions, 2 ran for touchdowns, and 15 pass breakups. Love the tape. A guy who can move around, but again, it's that physical size, similar to like an Isaiah Oliver from Colorado, that you just look at him and goes, this guy fits what you want in the NFL to match up against some of these bigger-bodied receivers. So Quentin Meeks, more of a second-round guy, second-round target. I absolutely love him. And again, if you're targeting some cornerback depth,
big-bodied cornerbacks to come from Stanford, I can't.
There was one wide receiver.
Any good ones? Like any good ones that ran sluggish 40 times?
Guys, not coming to mind.
Richard Shaman.
Shawshank.
Shawshank.
Richard Shaman. That's the second career. Yeah.
Touche. We got one.
We got a caller, baby.
Love it.
Any bets on who it is? Caller, who we got?
Steve. It's Steve.
Oh, it's Michael.
Hey!
Michael. I'm upset because I'm wrong. Not upset at you, Michael.
Michael, what's going on, man? What's on your mind?
So my question is, let's say by the time the Vikings are picking at 30, they say Isaiah Wynn is gone, and so what's the likelihood they draft someone like Will Hernandez?
Well, we just took him in our mock draft. Isaiah Wynn went at 11, I think it was. So early on, I mean, at the end of the day, he's just still a solid offensive line prospect. Maybe not a pure scheme fit, but I mean, there's just something to be said about those big, nasty guys who just get after it.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's just like good, right? So yeah, he wouldn't be in an ideal scheme or whatever. He would perform well. He'd be the best, I think, possible offensive line pick there in a world where Isaiah Wynn is gone. I mean, I've said this on every show. I love Wynn. If you can't get him, you can't get him. Will Hernandez is good. I mean, I personally prefer Billy Price. In our mock draft, Billy Price went a pick before the Vikings, which kind of sucks.
But you know what?
Doesn't
That might
matter.
happen.
Yeah.
That might happen in real life, too. So that's an equation that we might have to think about. Yeah, I think he just adds to that kind of old school NFC North type of mentality and physicality that Mike Zimmer wants, not just on his offensive line, not just on his offense, but for his team. That's Mike Zimmer. So Will Hernandez, I think, makes a lot of sense. Saw him up close and personal at the Senior Bowl. The guy is a monster. I mean, like, off the
he's
field.
He's like a beef tank,
He's
right?
just
He's
a
like
beef
walking
tank. He's a
around.
gym rat, man.
Yeah.
He's just a semi-truck, an 18-wheeler, man. So I really like him, add him to the addition of Pat Elflein last year. And, you know, an offensive line that was dead last in the league 2 years ago. Riley Reif, Mike Remmers, Pat Elflein, Will Hernandez. Keep bringing them in. Danny Isidora might end up developing. Who knows? I really like the potential. If you nail that first-round pick with an O-lineman like Billy Price or Hernandez, really like the potential of this offensive line this year.
Yep.
Would he be more like a left guard or a right guard?
I think he'd be a
Because I
left
guess,
guard. I think. What do you think?
Personally, I
Well,
think
it's because I'm sorry. It's like, cause do we know who the starting guards are going to be next year? It's like it's kind of up in the air.
It sounds like they like Remmers inside at guard from what Zimmer Spielman said at a press conference, kind of wrote the writing on the wall there. Which for me, I actually like Remmers at tackle. Draft a kid like Hernandez, and you have Danny Isidora on the other side develop. I like Remmers at tackle. You continue to have Rashad Hill as a swing guy. He's still young. As a swing guy and let him develop, but it sounds like they like Remmers. It's not what I would do, but you draft a Will Hernandez, and then you have Isidora kind of biting at his heels, developing that competition a little bit. So I think it depends on what they do with Remmers. I like him at tackle. I think they like him at guard.
Yep. Hey, Michael, appreciate you calling in there, man.
Thanks.
See you, mate.
Got another call or they drop?
He dropped out.
What?
Don't you have a call waiting on that Skype account?
Yeah, no, it
2018,
allows
man.
one. Yeah.
2018.
Yeah. All right. First, so Meeks. Love him.
Love Meek, again, physical guy, more second-round guy. He's in the second tier of cornerbacks, not in the Mike Hughes, Jair Alexander, the kind of those guys, Isaiah Oliver, those guys. But second tier, absolutely love him.
Now, if Jair Alexander falls to 30.
I'm telling you, dude, somebody's going to fall to 30.
Yeah.
Now, it's probably not going to be a guy like that I want, like a Mike McGlinchey, but like Orlando Brown's going to be sitting there, and it's going to be like, if you just don't think about the bad combine, he was like a top 20 guy.
Just don't think about it,
dude.
Just talking about it. He's
just had a bad day.
He doesn't move very well, but when's
Right.
that been important in football?
He had the
It's not
trots.
like it's a physical game. Somebody's going to fall to 30, Andy. I'm just telling you. Like, I don't know. Forget about the Taven Bryans and the Bailey Price. Somebody big is going to fall to 30. Don't think it's an Isaiah Wynn, but somebody like that. McGlinchey, Mike Hughes, Jair Alexander. I don't know.
Tape don't lie. Caller, who we got?
Hey, it's Alex in Baroka.
Hey, Alex Verocco. What's going on, man? Hey, like your home improvement stuff.
Oh, thanks. I just got done doing some coarse sanding on the floor. So
Now,
that's pretty
And
exciting.
what kind of grit you using? What, a 40 grit?
36.
Oh, wow.
Now, are you going the
I have
full?
no comeback to that.
extremely
I don't
coarse.
have anything
Are you
to
going the
say.
full Tim Allen route? So, are you spending time in federal prison for drug trafficking?
Yeah, something
After
like
the
that.
phenomenal Hollywood career?
Hey, I'm really sorry for inconveniencing a reef by calling in tonight.
Oh, remember this? Like a few weeks ago, you jokingly
Oh, it was
were
just-
like another
it was
caller.
just last
at the end.
week.
Oh, was it last week? Yeah, last week at
Oh
the
yeah,
end.
no,
it was,
no. AJ was up to call in, and I couldn't tell if you guys were getting another caller or if Arif was passing a kidney stone.
Oh,
Yeah,
fair.
to be really clear, he was kidding.
yeah.
Kidney stone.
Yeah, it's 70% of the airtime. Must be not quite
hate
enough, huh?
all callers, so don't take it personal.
Yeah. Hear that, Matthew Caller?
Just
Hates you. Yeah. Anyways, Alex is on your mind, man.
Have you guys talked much about the leading with the helmet?
No, we haven't actually
No,
talked
not
about
nothing. Yeah. What do you think? What's your stance?
I'm a fan of it, actually.
Really?
I mean, it's going to be frustrating to watch. I think. I don't think penalties. I don't know. Penalties are never really a fun aspect of the game, even if they go in your favor.
But Alex, reviewable penalties is where it's at. It's gonna be amazing.
But I don't know. Like when I was in high school football, like that was one of the biggest emphases. Yeah.
Emphasize.
You know, was the form tackling. Like, you were, you got a talking to if you were leading with your head, because it's a good way to get a stinger. And the guys that didn't listen, usually end up with stingers or concussions.
I think one of the concerns is even if you're a pretty good form tackler, you'll end up incurring penalties for stuff that you can't control despite being a good technique tackler. And I think so Richard Sherman complained about this tackle, and the Seahawks are famous for, not that he's a Seahawk anymore, but the Seahawks are famous for their hawk tackle, and they've been able to reduce head injuries and increase their tackling efficiency by taking tackling lessons from rugby, where you have to play head-up football. But it becomes difficult in a ton of scenarios to be able to avoid that kind of helmet contact or look like you're leading with your head or aiming in a way where if the player had done what you expected, your head would be in a fine spot, and now you're not. And I think the biggest concern is not that this is like a bad idea kind of in the abstract, is that we don't really know how it's going to be enforced, kind of like the crown of the helmet rule a couple of years ago. We don't really know how it's going to be enforced, and the penalty could end up disqualifying players, from the game.
So Malcolm Jenkins, week 1, first play, you gone.
Well, yeah.
We'll take it.
Here you go.
The other thing I was curious about, so Arden Key, if you're a GM and you look at just his laundry list of issues, and then you look at Randy Gregory.
That's the first thing
I mean, if you look at that, just the risk reward of it, and the Cowboys took Gregory in the second round, I think.
Yep.
I think they're similar enough where if you're a GM and you look at what happened with Randy Gregory, I think you can't responsibly take him in the first round. And really, I think you should be hesitant to take him in the second round. I don't.
No,
is that unfair?
Where's the risk reward?
Yep,
you're right. Where's the risk reward? And that's not just for off the field guys. That's for injury guys, but are studs too. Like the linebacker that was supposed to go top 5, he ended up going to the Cowboys as well. Or Miles
Jalen Smith.
Miles Jack, same thing. Top 10 guy. Where's the risk reward for Arden Key? Because again, I think he's a top 15 guy at a premium position. He'd be pushing Harold Landry for that first pure edge rusher to go.
Yeah.
But where's the risk reward?
Right,
I mean, do I have multiple seconds like the Colts? They have multiple. Do I think, like Denny Green, you say, well, I have 2 first-round picks, so I can have a little bit more luxury with this one. Don't take Demetrius Underwood.
Too soon? So my kind of concern is overreacting specifically to Randy Gregory, because I think he represents kind of one.
And Gregory was damn good when he was on the field, though.
Pretty good, yeah. I think he represents one end of the risk spectrum, and I think people will be reminded of that end as opposed to the other end, which I think, Everson Griffin, I think is maybe a good example of somebody who had a ton of off-the-field issues, fell, I think, from the second, or whereas probably would have gone, all the way to the fourth. Because of those off-the-field issues. Now, it's a different manner of an off-the-field issue, and I think...
I think each case is different.
Right.
I really do. Each case you have to look at individually.
But yeah, I think that, GMs probably who had, a second or maybe even a first-round grade on Griffin because he blew up the combine, maybe are kicking themselves.
He was our punt gunner.
Right. Are kicking themselves for dropping him so far because of his off-field stuff. Or Tyrann Mathieu, for example, fell to the
Third round.
right?
Yep.
And
Top 10 talent.
all of these are different for a bunch of reasons. Tyrann Mathieu ended up going to a really great environment for him, with Patrick Peterson there.
Yeah,
but
drier.
I think that it'd be too easy for us to say, hey, we found one extreme end of what that risk reward looks like from a risk perspective. We're going to drop him, and I wouldn't be surprised if GMs end up doing that. But, Arden Key, and it should be said, he didn't have the greatest year. He didn't have the year a lot of people expected. But I imagine, he's more likely going to represent what he did, the year before in terms of, what he is as a prospect. That's the worry. I think that, it depends on kind of how he responded to, interview questions and kind of what his essential character is or how he responds to particular environments. All that matters. But I think I'm a little bit concerned, not too concerned, but a little bit concerned that GMs are going to overreact to what happened with Randy Gregory and maybe underreact to, say, Tyrann Mathieu or Everson Griffin.
I think he still ends up being I still think he ends up going in the second round somewhere. Could be late second round. I still think he ends up going second round.
If you're having a disagreement in the war room and you're for Arden Key in the second round, can you point to a guy like Joe Mixon? I mean, I know it's only 1 year and everything, but
I mean,
the
Mixon was more.
Well, I mean, his issues right now are just on the field, right? Like, I don't think that
Arden Key just straight up quit football.
Yeah, right.
Like,
but yeah, I don't think his off the field stuff is why he kind of is underperforming for the Bengals. And a lot of people are still, making excuses or whatever you want to say for Mixon, saying, it's the offensive line. None of those running backs performed, etc.
Is Jeremy Hill playing so well, taking away carries?
So maybe. Also, the Bengals are just it's the Bengals.
The Bengals.
They're doing stuff, man. Yeah, John Ross is a defensive back or something. I don't know. So I don't know if Joe Mixon would be the greatest argument in favor of a guy that's saying, hey, kind of hold the phone on this. But, you can point to tons of examples of off the field. I mean, like you said, Demetrius Underwood, off the field stuff that didn't work out. If you're in a war room and you're arguing, I would imagine there's a bunch of war rooms where there's a lot less argument and it only takes one team. And I would imagine he's probably going to go mid-late second, something like that. There's not a ton of edge rushers in this class after Landry.
I like that Demetrius Underwood tried to kill himself in the name of Christ, and then he's like, all right, I'll play for the Cowboys.
You like that? You like that question mark? Not exclamation or Kirk Cousins exclamation. You like that?
That's a weird thing to like, man.
Thanks for taking my call, guys.
All right, man. Good to talk to you. See you. Yep. All right. That's a good over-under. Arden Key, where you think, and what would be the over at 42?
The
Mixon line?
50.
Yeah, 50.
Hey, caller, who we got?
Hey, it's Alex from Chicago. How you guys doing?
How you doing,
Alex, Chicago. What's going on, man?
So, you guys know that fan on Twitter when, let's say, a trade goes down and there's that annoying fan that's like, oh, why didn't my team do that? It's such a steal.
I'm that guy. Yeah.
I'm that guy.
Yeah.
I love that
keep
guy.
going. Yep.
We're all that guy. Okay, so I want to talk about the Sewell Cravens deal and get your guys' opinion. Let's say
he's a safety now.
Where did he go?
Yeah, he's a safety now. Let's say the Vikings did make that trade for some reason. Does he fit in that defense? Could he have provided a role in this defense? I'm just curious.
I think they would find a fit for him in the defense. I mean, he played so well when he was playing for Washington that they would. I think Luke is just finding out about this trade.
He went to Denver? Whoa, I got a tweet about this. Hold on.
Wait,
could we have done this?
They swapped a fourth round and swapped a fifth round and then gave up a fifth.
First of all, what's with trading for these kind of veteran? I mean, he's only been in the league 2 years, but these veterans for mid to late round picks. But then what? They just swapped picks.
I think they gave up a fifth and then swapped fourths and fifths.
Swapped fourth and fifth. Okay, and they gave up a fifth.
Yeah.
Woo.
But yeah, I think they would find a place for him. I mean, Denver says they're going to play him at safety, which I believe. But I mean, he's a strong safety in that scenario anyway.
But he would contemplate retirement, right? Because of a bunch of concussions, right? Is that the deal?
I don't know specifically why he was contemplating retirement, but yeah, I think he even told Washington he was going to retire.
Risk reward. The last caller, another Alex, talked about the risk reward of Arden Key and the risk reward of where he would go, similar to Randy Gregory. Same type of thing. I mean, a fifth-round pick, I think, is worth the risk reward. I think.
But yeah, I think you do have this question of, maybe he's not quite as versatile. He's much more talented, but maybe he's not quite as versatile as Andrews Sendejo. So you can't use him and Harrison Smith kind of interchangeably in a way that's really helped that defense out a lot. And it's been a key feature, I think, of how that defense has worked. So you're right that there is definitely something there that changes, I think, the essential nature of what they like that defense to look like. But I think also the Vikings have been looking into trying to find a way to get an effective base nickel or even a base dime. And I can't think of a better player for that than someone in the mold of Sua Cravens, who could fit that base nickel that allows you to defend the run as well as he does. So I think that they would find a way to fit him, and they might even do it in a way that puts another safety on the field anyway. So yeah, in that world, I think so. I also don't mind that the Vikings weren't in that market. I think, it makes a lot of sense to pull the trigger if you're a team that kind of needs another body on the defense, and not pull the trigger if you're a team that's pretty happy with what your defense has done and you don't really need to change things up too much.
Bam. Yeah, I agree. I got one more question for you.
Go ahead. Yep. Rip it.
This locker room is so incredibly strong
OBJ.
To bring in a guy like anybody. I mean, Sheldon Richardson, not the highest character guy, but I don't really have a worry with him. But if you brought in a guy, and I'm not saying I want to, if you brought in a guy like Odell Beckham Jr., who just does not stop talking, would this locker room support a player like that?
He mainly talks to him. So, we were talking hour one, a lot of the stuff he does is not the classic locker room cancer stuff. I think he's just a straight up weirdo.
Yeah, I don't think it's the same stuff that got Terrell Owens in so much trouble. It is a big personality that's contentious. I will absolutely not disagree with that. And that can create issues, but it's not the same kind of poison the locker room type stuff. The stuff that back when Mike Wallace was a bad locker room guy, Mike Wallace complaining about targets in a win, for example. I don't think that's the same kind of stuff that lands Odell Beckham in trouble. I do think that in a world where Odell Beckham is somehow on the Vikings, whether or not they pay too much to get him or not, I do think that the locker room would adapt and fit his personality and support him. I do think that you're right that there's a really strong locker room, and that's really key to that kind of environment, because when you have strong personalities like that potentially can cause problems but are not explicitly cancerous, it can... it may need some guidance, right? How do you turn that energy into something positive? And when you've got guys who were one of those things, I talked about this just in the last call, guys who were one of those things that turned into another one of those things, like Everson Griffin, I think is maybe a perfect example of that. Then you can have a locker room that can turn a lot of that energy into something super positive. I mean, Brandon Marshall, I think, is another good example of a guy who is, a lot of people think is a locker room cancer, but I think it's more that he's got the kind of energy that can turn into a locker room problem, but in the right environments produces something really positive, and in the wrong environments, like in Miami, can create big problems. And for Brandon Marshall, those big problems, followed him home, but also created problems in the locker room. I think the locker room that the Vikings have is the kind that can turn that energy into something positive.
I also think that's incredibly intentional, right? With who they've drafted, what kind of people they put together, and all that. So I guess that's, to his point, it's something you don't want to mess up with just one guy.
Right, yeah. And it's important that you keep stocking the locker room with those kind of guys. Otherwise, you keep on convincing yourself you've got a strong locker room, and you keep on adding these guys that could potentially be problems when now you no longer have a strong locker room. But I think, it's got the foundation and the durability to handle another one of those guys. And it's, I'd actually be more worried if it was someone like Muhammad Wilkerson than if it was Odell Beckham, because Muhammad Wilkerson, his problems relate to potentially even quitting on the team, whereas I don't think Odell ever quits on the team. Andy mentioned this in hour one. Eli Apple is a bigger problem than Odell Beckham.
Now, do you subscribe to this theory that in a group of people, it's better to have multiple dysfunctional people rather than just one? The Rams theory.
I can kind of see that, actually. It depends on the nature of the dysfunctional.
Or if there's one dysfunctional person, everyone focuses on that guy, and it becomes a divisive issue. If there's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
it becomes noise.
I'd say people's this is who we are.
I think 10 is a bit much.
We're a pirate
other
ship now.
People who are not dysfunctional become dysfunctional because they think it's okay.
Well, they would.
I think that's a fair point.
Yeah,
I think you are who you are. I don't think
they didn't become Miami during the late
my
90s.
life's going to go off the rails because this guy's in the locker room.
I absolutely disagree with Luke.
The Vikings make a third floor crew or whatever type song. We're all like, damn it.
Oh man, it's third leg Greg again.
No, the only
Well,
way.
going back to the Brandon Marshall thing real quick. That trade actually made me real mad because I think the Vikings needed a wide receiver, and the Bears gave up 2 third-round picks. And I was like, oh, come on. We could have done that.
I absolutely agree with you.
I think it was less than that. I think it was a 5th rounder.
Yeah,
it
I
was
think
something
you're
very
right.
minuscule.
I'll look it up.
Nothing.
Well, he got traded from the Broncos for 2/3 and then from the Bears for a 5th, right? Like, I think that's what.
Yeah. Like it's understandable that the Bears won't trade in division.
The Bears.
So the Jets.
I actually agree with
7th
you.
and a 5th. 7th and a 5th.
Yeah, the Vikings need. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Then the Vikings at the time needed a wide receiver. I mean, they needed a wide receiver for like 10 years before Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs showed up.
That was right when, the first few, big name veterans were starting to get traded for dirt cheap picks.
But I mean,
Gus Frerotte needs a tall receiver.
Got traded for each other.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, guys, thanks for taking the call. Go get your guys. I'll see you at the pub.
Hey,
right.
just real quick, would you buy a GGYG shirt if it was available?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right.
He'd buy 2.
No
See,
question.
Tom, you were
See you at the
wrong.
pub.
We got another call.
Yep.
Hey, caller, we got GGYG. Caller?
Caller, it's Tommy. Who you got?
Chickpeas are now the chicks, no peas. Discuss.
Rhode Island. Rhode Island.
Hola, ¿cómo está usted?
Sí.
Hey,
He's been trying for a while. He might think he's still on hold.
caller.
You're not on
No,
hold.
I'm not on hold. I know. I know.
All right.
But I just
Dramatic.
listened to the conversation first.
It's dramatic.
Okay, so just 2, I guess, comments and then a question for the panel here. I just don't think Rick Spielman's going to want to take a guard in the first round. I don't think it's in his DNA.
He might not.
I really don't think. I think he badly wants to trade down into the early second so he can say I at least took a second round guard.
Yeah.
And secondly, I like your mock draft a lot. It's really good. Except I think it's a little bereft of offensive playmaking talent. I wouldn't even like a Ronald Jones or something like that. Just somebody. I think we just need some more playmakers. I know
We did have
3,
an
4
opportunity
good
to grab Mike
Go
Gesicki.
ahead.
We passed on it.
Dallas Goedert was there in that
they're
first
30.
round pick that we thought long and hard about, and I'll tell you what, you're not far off on the Spielman first round guard, right? I mean, Delvin Cook second round running back guard, maybe the same case. His MO and his history with guys like Fusco and John Sullivan, the guys he hits on, he likes taking stabs in the later rounds. But maybe eventually, especially last year, seeing a huge run on those types of guys going Ethan Posick, Deion Dawkins. There was tons of them that went from the beginning of the second round to the middle of the third. Maybe the league, though, is starting to change their thinking and philosophy a little bit more, which is going to force his hand. And if he wants one, maybe he's going to have to take one, but in the first round. But I would be all for trading down 10 spots, scooping up a 4th, and next year's 6th or 7th, and taking one of these guards that are still available, and hopefully one of them's your guy's still there 10 picks later, anyways. Yeah. So I'm with you on that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Spielman hasn't drafted an interior offensive lineman except for Pat Elflein earlier than the 5th round in his entire tenure with the Vikings.
What about Willie Beavers?
Oh yeah, I mean, they did move the guard.
Tackle guard, yeah.
But that was all Tony Sperano too.
That was Sperano. So,
that's a Tony Sperano.
But I mean, with Willie Beavers and Pat Elflein, he's kind of moving up rounds and stuff like that. I think the Vikings have kind of realized that this strategy of hoping that you'd find Brandon Fusco's, who was legitimately great for 1 year, or Burks or Sullivans or whatever, is not really panning out. And I think that they're just willing to invest in protection for Kirk Cousins. To your point about the playmakers, we were thinking about Mike Gesicki. We passed on that chance. We also were gambling on Nyheim Hines being available a little bit later, and he went just a little bit earlier than we thought.
I mean, I'll say that you can't have it all.
Yeah,
right? If you want to, we don't have a ton of picks either. And if you want to, copycat league, look at what the Eagles did. Just really build the trenches. We invested a lot of picks in the D line, and it could have went the O line, could have went the other way. But I will say this: Calvin Ridley was sitting there, and we just went.
Probably should have.
And we just went. This is kind of unrealistic, isn't
probably
it?
should have let it happen.
I mean, it's kind of unrealistic.
Sorry about that. My question, I guess, is an exciting topic: offensive line construction. And I guess I just have 3 quick scenarios. would you rather have Will Hernandez, Billy Price, whoever, replace left guard Nick Easton and have Remmers at right guard and Hill at right tackle, or right guard be replaced by Wynn, Hernandez, Billy Price, whoever, and have Remmers at right tackle and Easton at left guard, or Remmers at right guard, Easton at left guard, and replace right tackle with like a Mike McGlinchey or a Connor Williams. I know, not saying so much the person, but it's just kind of the construction of the offensive line.
I like the second one.
What you thought about that?
I like Remmers at right tackle for some reason, and I think it's just easy to go get two guards.
That last one sounds pretty good, though.
I mean, if McGlinchey's there, yeah, I love McGlinchey. Connor Williams would be a dream for sure. You don't pass up on guys like that. I think Rashad Hill, if he needs to start, he can in a pinch, but he's a great swing tackle right now as he continues to develop. I think they like Danny Isidora more than maybe they're leading on to. So I like Remmers on the outside, whatever that equation may be of those three. But I think ultimately they like Remmers at left guard from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it does sound like that. I want to keep Remmers with right-sided footwork and right-sided handwork because he's been much better at right tackle than left tackle, and I bet he's better at right guard than left guard. But I would prefer Remmers at tackle because I think he's an okay guard and a pretty good tackle. And on some days he can be great, and some days he can be poor. But overall, I think he's a pretty good tackle, and I think he's okay at guard. And I would rather have a more dramatic upgrade at guard than have a whatever upgrade at guard and have a downgrade at tackle with Rashad Hill. So I would go with Remmers at tackle, figure out one of those guard spots, and then have which usually means Easton, but it could mean competition with Isidore and an undrafted free agent or something, and have that other guard spot locked up with whoever they think is the best guard available to them, or whatever pick they end up selecting.
I mean, I like Easton this year. I know he didn't do well as the PFF grade, but I thought he kind of gave me a little of a Elflein and him give me a little Esslinger Setterstrom vibe, back in the early 2000s Gophers, which I like the throwback. And, yeah. Elflein always was 40 yards downfield, which was great. He was way ahead of everybody, so that was fun. And
I will say that I think both Elflein and Easton outperformed what their PFF grade says, but I do think that there is reason for caution there. That is represented by the PFF grade. And I think for both of them, particularly Easton, especially because Elflein improved his consistency over the season, that their inconsistency did create a lot of problems, especially in the running game. Now, I think Dalvin Cook overcame a bunch of those in those first 4 games, and I think he will continue to when he comes back. But I think a lot of the interior run-stopping presence that the Vikings saw came as a result of Easton. Because the Vikings, their run success rate, their yards per carry, whatever running statistic du jour, DVOA that you want to use was negatively impacted, and I think that, and it's not just having Jerick McKinnon and Latavius Murray running the ball, because they did end up doing pretty well over the course of the last part of the season. I think it has to do with how much interior run presence that people like Easton and occasionally Elflein did allow, and so Easton I thought had some pretty good moments. I think that on the move, just like Elflein, on the move, he's actually he shines. But I do think that when it comes to stronger presences up the middle, especially really strong defensive tackles, people like Aaron Donald or Michael Brockers for the Rams, or now I guess Ndamukong Suh, they face problems that someone like Mike Remmers might not, although again I like him more tackle, or obviously a guy that you might prefer at the end of the first, early in the second.
And just a quick thing, Will Hernandez, is that a scheme fit for what we're trying to do now? Doesn't he seem a little bulky?
Not quite.
For what we're trying to do now?
He's not quite, and I prefer Wynn and Price above him. Below, like if those two are gone and Will Hernandez is there, I don't think there's another guard who might be more of a scheme fit that would perform better for the Vikings than Will Hernandez, even if he's kind of miscast in the wrong-ish scheme. Because I think he still moves well enough for you to find spots where he can perform. You may have to design your plays. I remember the Vikings, they did have to design plays where they'd keep Fusco at home and they'd have whichever guard, Charlie Johnson or whoever, whichever
Johnson.
guard. Right.
Best show ever. We got Charlie Johnson and a Setterstrom reference. Great.
Charlie,
whoever the other guard was, occasionally Joe Berger, you'd have the other guy move on pulling plays and have kind of Berger stay at home, and that kind of gave away a lot of the way that they were going to run the ball. And that created some issues, but overall it was still better because when Fusco was playing well, he was playing really well. And I think you maybe have to do that a little bit with Will Hernandez. You lose a little bit of the versatility that you want in the run game, but the upgrade that you get in the passing game at guard, plus what you can still do in the run game, is worth it, I think, over a lot of the other guards that are, quote-unquote, better scheme fits.
No Ragnow or Daniels at guard? I mean, can they work at guard? Or
yeah,
are they better than
both
Hernandez?
of them can. Daniels could be a phenomenal guard. I think Ragnow can too. I think ideally you want to get him at center because they're so good at center, and center is a tougher position to find.
I think
you're probably getting
yeah.
better value from them. But absolutely, I would love James Daniels. I mean, we took Hernandez in that mock at 1, and James Daniels sitting there at 2 in the second round.
That was such a difficult pick.
And you're thinking about it, you're like, think about how good an interior core, how young this talent of group is of Elflein, Hernandez, and James Daniels. You're set for the next 5-6 years. So
we had a couple of first round talents to choose from.
Yeah, Taven Bryan. Yeah, it was tough.
And if we drafted like Billy Price and Ragnow, we could kick out Easton to tackle. We just have a line of centers. You could bring back
just
Ryan Cook.
Well, bring back Ryan Cook. Ryan Cook can do it all.
Just a line of centers. I love it.
Random. The guy who beat out Joe Berger in Miami, Ryan Cook.
Wait, really?
Yeah. They cut him right bore the season 2011. Yeah.
Stud.
Hey, thanks for your call.
All right, man. Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks.
Yep.
Hey, caller, who we got?
Hey, how's it going, guys? Finally got through. Damn. That's a while.
Busy night.
You didn't even podium, Steve. You're 5th.
Well, anyways.
Yeah.
You're
Dude,
like,
I couldn't even get through to the touch tone. It kept calling saying line busy. I couldn't
you're like
even get through.
Pistorius running without the blades
Whoa.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Whoa.
in a 4-man race. Anyway, Steve, what's on your mind?
Not much. Just we're getting to 4 weeks from the draft. Luke, are you getting excited, man, or what?
Yeah.
Wait,
Yeah, I hope so, man.
Luke,
So,
if you had
I
to
hope
give
so.
up Christmas, Thanksgiving, or the NFL draft for 5 years, what would you do?
Wait, I have to give up one of them?
Both Christmas and Thanksgiving, or the draft.
Oh, yeah. For
I would
don't need
without
presents
doubt,
anymore.
yeah, I would do it.
get
The
presents
draft,
under the
like,
purple
everything rolled
tree,
into
man.
one.
Purple tree.
It's Christmas, Thanksgiving, it's Easter, it's your birthday. It's all rolled into one.
4th of July.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Prom
So I'm
night,
just curious.
if you know what I mean.
I see we signed Marcus Sherrill today, but
Love it.
I'm not worried about the depth we got. Problem now, it looks like along the trenches here now. What are we gonna do about that? What do you think about the trenches? I don't know.
Kirk Cousins, backup left guard.
Yeah. Realistically, what do you think we should do though?
What do you think? Andy?
Spielman's going to have to trade down, acquire picks, and hit on him. That's basically
Yeah, I think so too.
And Jalil's going to have to pan, right? Maybe Danny Isidore might have to pan.
Rashad Hill, step up.
Rashad Hill might have to pan. And then, you got to go hit on those first 2 picks, man. I don't know if you saw our mock that we did in hour 1. Will Hernandez won.
I saw him. Yeah, I saw Will Hernandez first pick, I think it was.
Yep, and then James Daniels was sitting there, just talked about this to the last caller, was sitting there in the second round. Imagine Elflein, James Daniels at guard, and Will Hernandez at guard. How young and talented that core would be. You'd be set for a while, you know what I mean? But you still need to hit on Jaleel Johnson then, and then you still need to go find a Nathan Shepard, Fort Hays State, Tim Settle, Virginia, Harrison Phillips, Stanford. In the
He's
third
my
round,
guy. I like him on the D-line. I like him.
Yeah, I love him for sure. Yep. So
Andy, I saw that George Edwards working out your boy Taven Bryan this morning. I saw him working him out this morning at his pro day. What do you think about that, Andy? But that got you fired up.
Taven Bryan was working out George Edwards. That's how it works.
Techniques and fundamentals.
I will say, though, it is interesting when they send like when Zimmer went down to TCU to work out Doxson along with Spielman, or the coordinators go somewhere. I mean,
Mixon,
common sense, it's a huge indicator, and it's really cool to see him just hands-on.
Yeah. Well, Luke, I was wanting to ask. So, I mean, I know you've been. So, well, what about this? I'll throw another curveball. What about James Daniels and Frank Ragnow, your first 2 picks? What about those 2? You think would you like that one as well?
Who goes
The line of centers, right?
Boy, yeah. We just talked about this the last caller.
Right?
Yeah, both of them could play guard. I think again, you maximize their value at center because it's a harder position to nail.
Yeah,
and they could both play center, but you're not going to move Elfline. I think both of them would be great.
Oh no,
would be great guards. Ragnow's a phenomenal run blocker, and James Daniels is so strong. He fits the NFL right now. So, I mean, again, and this last caller brought this up. You know, Spielman isn't known for grabbing guards early on, especially in the first round. So maybe he's going to be just itching to trade back and then grab James Daniels or Hernandez or Billy Price or Ragnow, somebody like that, and scoop up an extra 4th-round pick or something like that. So that may be something.
I think so too.
He may have his eyes.
Go ahead.
He may have his eyes set on guard, but he's not willing to take one in the first round. That just might be the truth.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, you know, barring Jerry Alexander, I don't think he's going to fall that far. No, he's my other guy. I'd take it 30 if anybody, if the guy's already gone. If Isaiah Wynn and your other guy's already gone, I'd take him at 30 in a heartbeat. But that was my other question. I just wanted to ask you, what do you like at slot cornerback for just like in like the middle rounds? Like, how about that or late rounds? What do you guys like at that position?
There's a guy, he's day 3, but Isaac Yadam from Boston College. Just remember the name. Day 3 guy.
I've never heard of him.
Yep, Boston College, day 3 guy. I really like MJ Stewart from North Carolina.
Yeah,
if we're talking
MJ Stewart.
If we're talking like 4th-round corners, MJ Stewart. I talked about Quentin Meeks again. Maybe not a pure slot corner. Probably a guy you'd want to take advantage of his size on the outside. And then, you know, we got Isaiah Oliver in the 3rd round. I don't know. I mean, I love the cornerback class. That's all I can say. I hope we get a piece of it in the first
Not
3-4
as
rounds.
many slot guys as we saw last year or the year before. Remember when Cornelder was coming out? There were a bunch of slot guys.
Great zone
Miami,
guy.
right?
Yeah.
Maybe
Maybe
Miami,
the best
right?
zone guy. Yeah. I love
Yeah.
Carlton Davis too, Auburn, but he's more of a zone guy, more of an outside boundary zone guy. So I love the corners though. So we'll see.
What about Duke Dawson, the kid from Florida? He's a pure slot corner, isn't he? I wouldn't mind him in the 3rd round.
Actually,
He'd be a good value.
Actually not a bad pick, I think.
That would be good. Yeah.
I'd want to trade down a little bit out of the 3rd to get him, maybe top of the 4th or something like that. He's the kind of guy that he's the kind of guy that I think I wouldn't want to overspend for him, but I could see grabbing him in some value if he was your target.
Levi Wallace from Alabama could be a real good.
I've heard of the kid. I've heard of that kid. He was like a tryout. He came on like late, didn't he, or something? Whatever.
Yeah, he's tiny. He's like Marvin Harrison thin, like Paul Richardson.
There's actually a smaller one. Dante Jackson, LSU.
Oh yeah, the guy that thought he was going to run a 4.25.
Yeah, I've heard him too.
If you come from LSU, you're probably pretty good.
Yeah, if Marvin Harrison had more muscle on him, he wouldn't have to carry a weapon.
That's true.
That's a deep pull. Listeners, Google that.
Don't.
Oh, jeez.
He gets angry. You don't want to make him angry.
Well, he's from Florida.
Right.
Of course he gets angry.
Well, last quick question. I mentioned Dante. You know, I heard, you know, now we know for sure Sherrill's not going to Carolina. Now he's back today finally after
There's no way to know
your boy BJ tweeted that out last week, by the way. You know, nice job on his part. No offense.
We love BJ here, man. We love
No,
BJ.
I love BJ. He's a cool dude. I was giving him crap. You know. But where do you think Pettis goes? Do you think he goes like round 3 or higher? Where do you think he goes in the draft? Just
Pettis,
curious.
I see, is a day 2 or a round 2 guy.
Yeah, I think he's a round 2 talent. For some reason, I just don't hear a lot of, which means nothing. I mean, who am I?
Right.
I'm just saying, I don't hear a lot of day 2 or round 2 buzz for him. I think it'd be a great 4th-round pick. You never know, man. Some of these guys slide. They can't all go in the top 3 rounds. So some of these guys slide. I would love him as a 4th-round pick, but we don't even have
for sure.
First of all, we don't have
a
4th-round pick.
I heard on Twitter yesterday that Indy was looking at taking Anthony Cowley in the 2nd round. I was hearing that. Did you hear about that yesterday?
I heard about it. I don't think there's any. I highly doubt that. I heard about it. That'd be wild, man. That'd be wild, man.
Well, you never know. It's the NFL draft. Anything can happen. We know that, right?
I'll tell you what,
so we'll see what Costner does on draft day, right? You know. Yankee Hyundai, he said to take his brother at all costs, something like that, right? Today was the pro day today or whatever. So, all right, guys, take care. I'll talk to you later, okay?
See you, bro.
Hey, Steve.
Take care.
All right, bye.
All right, man.
We got an incoming call. There we go.
All right. Hey, caller, who we got?
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Tosin from Chicago.
Tosin, what's going on, man?
What's up, dude?
Hey, what's going on? Random question. So if you have DJ Moore at the bottom, the first, do you take him? Yes or no?
What, like DJ Moore
as a generic team or as the Vikings? Because as a generic team, I think
as the Vikings.
As the Vikings, I don't know. I think it kind of depends on what the rest of the board turned out to look like. But I don't see a scenario where people that I think the Vikings could use more all get eliminated, right? Like, it would be a weird draft to find like all of the premium guards, defensive tackles, and cornerbacks go, and then that's kind of the scenario where
or if you don't take a guard in the first round, 5 of them go before 30.
Right.
I just love to see that.
But yeah, in that scenario, I mean, I really like DJ Moore a lot.
I love
Luke says he loves him, but he didn't rank him very high.
Yeah, what does Norv Turner and Scott Turner know about Maryland wide receivers, though?
Yeah, right.
I mean, if you pick him up, what do you do with Treadwell then?
Deuces.
Rip. I don't like. He could be a fine 4th receiver, right? Maybe 5th, depends on what Stacey Coley does. I mean, honestly, who cares? Like, if Treadwell does great, he does great. If he doesn't do great, now you've got a plan. I just like, who cares? Like, you don't have to worry about the sunk cost problem. If he doesn't, if he's not panning out, it looks like he's not going to pan out, then you should make plans as if he won't. And if he does, you're in a really great position. Maybe you can trade him and do well, but like, who cares what you do with him?
So are you saying you hate Treadwell?
Wow, he just said that tweet.
Wow, direct quote, man. You got me.
I'm just
I got ganked, man. No props.
No, you set that up well. Good.
No, like at what point though does the draft pedigree get stripped from the player and then they have to compete?
3 years. I mean, we saw it with Patterson, right?
Yeah.
3 years, 4 years. The 4th year, no excuses. I mean, here we go.
No, I think in the modern NFL environment,
at least for first round guys, if you're a 4th round guy, like you're probably stripped after.
I think in the modern NFL environment, I don't know of any receiver that is produced as poorly. Because Treadwell has less than 100 receiving yards combined.
He had exactly 200 last year.
Not great, Bob.
With 200 receiving yards last year? All right.
Yeah, he had 15 year one.
Oh, yeah, okay. But yeah, I don't know any receiver that has performed as poorly as Treadwell has, that has been drafted in the first 2 rounds, that has turned into a 500 or 800 yard receiver. So what do you do with this guy that could end up giving you maybe 400 yards a year? Yeah. Who cares?
Just take away like the
when
draft
we drafted Treadwell, wasn't it that? I'm sorry. When we drafted When we drafted Treadwell, weren't we saying that he was young and that was the reason why? Like
That's true. He's mature. He dominated SEC competition.
It's true.
Age,
one of the youngest receivers
and
in
run
draft.
blocking were the 2 biggest strengths,
Yeah,
or
right.
like things we hung our hat on.
But once you enter the NFL, it's very difficult. Even if I think at receiver specifically, even if you're a young receiver, for you to produce. If you haven't produced your first 2 years. Even if you're like 21 entering the NFL, you take a look at young receivers entering the NFL, the reason they're so interesting is because their prime lasts longer, not because they should get more time to develop. Because if they were supposed to be dominating against, people that are 22, 23 in college, they should be doing at least reasonably well against people that are older than them in the NFL. The Vikings have given him every chance, I think, to succeed, and he hasn't really picked it up. Like, I get that his youth is a huge asset, but really we should think of that as his peak will last longer, not he should get a much longer leash than somebody's like 24.
To hit the peak.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess. Well, have a good one, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for calling in, man. Appreciate it.
You're the man. Like, just take away draft pedigree. Name me one thing that Treadwell has done the first 2 years that Caleb Jones couldn't do.
Well, get on the field.
Yeah, the peel back block on
that was
that Green Bay guy.
He did make a one-handed catch on the sideline in the same game, I think it was.
He didn't get penalized for that, did he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
he did. Well.
Yeah. It was right before the half, and like the Vikings were marching, but I was still like, I'll take that penalty.
I'm not going to blame him for that. That was fantastic.
Yeah. We'll go through some of the Twitter questions. The Reef gets Analytic of the Week chambered up. This one's from Alec DePrzinski.
Yep.
All right. What the hell happened to Michael Floyd? R.I.P.
Oh, yeah, I tweeted back.
You go. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's not coming back. That's what Chris Thomason reported, that the Vikings are not expected to re-sign him.
Yep.
I think if he can't overtake someone that I just trashed for like 5 minutes, LaQuan Treadwell, after coming back onto the right, and he had a really good training camp, then I don't know what use he's providing that isn't worth putting a developmental guy and seeing what he could do instead. And I think that's how the Vikings are seeing it. Like, I would be fine bringing him back, but the presumed logic that I'm just kind of putting into the Vikings' mouth, the presumed logic that you could probably just find a guy that potentially has higher upside that does all the same things, which is like get 18 yards or whatever, makes sense. I mean, what happened was he didn't fight his way back onto the field after the suspension.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. Do you think he over under 0.5? Oh, wait, no. Decimals are bad with Floyd. Does he ever play another NFL snap?
Jesus.
The hell.
Floyd?
I think Floyd. I thought that was creative.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
I'll take the over.
I'll say yes.
I could see him being like a mid-season interior replacement, and suddenly he gets like 20 yards.
I mean, he goes back to the Patriots. Brandon Cooks and Hogan go down again. They got back, baby.
There's some receiver depth charts out there. And I know that like the Bears got a little better with Allen Robinson. There's a few teams receiver depth charts that are god awful.
Carolina is
when he was on the Vikings had the best first-round blocking receivers in the league.
Let's go.
That is fair.
GG.
That's fair. What is a catch?
It's different now. I don't know what the rule is, but it's simpler, and those things that we thought were catches are catches now. So
now, did you come across scuttlebutt that the NFL secretly implemented the new rule during the Super Bowl?
Yeah, Mortensen was on some podcast. I think the Simmons not just some podcast,
right?
The most popular football podcast on the planet.
On like the Football Machine.
He was on our show, yeah.
Right. Mortensen was on, I think, Simmons' podcast and mentioned that they were using the new rules.
Yep.
And then when that came out, the NFL was like, no, we absolutely did not change the rules for this
So
game.
you're telling me that Ertz and the Clements catches were not catches, so the Eagles did not win. Vikings beat the Super Bowl.
I thought at the time that Ertz's catch should be a catch and was not going to be ruled a catch based on the history, and then they were ruled catches, and I was like, well, good, but now I'm even more confused like I am after every
And also,
catch.
I'm more pissed that Philly got the breaks.
Yeah,
even over the Patriots. Like,
I mean, you're a classic Patriots fan, so it's not as difficult for you.
Well, I felt like the Ertz catch was very much like the Jesse James catch.
That's exactly what it compared it to, and a bunch of people were like, no, it's not the same because he took a couple of steps, and it's like, but the point is, the point is, he made a football. They both made football moves, and one gets screwed out of it. Yeah, the things that we intuitively think are catches are much more likely to be catches now. That's what it seems like. Enact common to the football game as part of the catch rule. That includes a third step. But, yeah, you control the football and have both feet down. That's good.
I like that Zach Ertz isn't the best athlete in his house.
Oh, yeah.
Santa Clara alum, Julie Johnston.
Julie Ertz, hello.
Julie Ertz,
sorry. Reef, numbers.
Oh, yeah.
Analytic of the week.
Have you heard of wide receiver market share? It doesn't matter. I'm going to tell you what it is.
Yeah. Is it what Roseanne had last night? They did huge numbers.
There were a lot of tweets about Roseanne last night.
I had like an 18. Damn. Like
Stormy Daniels still did better, right?
Yeah. Stormy Daniels did better than a lot of sporting events.
Yeah, it was like 22 mil, right?
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
But, yeah, I didn't... It was like the reboot of her sitcom, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
Because it's reboot season.
Yeah.
It is.
But yeah, wide receiver market share is just the percentage of receiving yards that you got for your team.
Mm-hmm.
So initially, that doesn't seem like it's all that great. But it does adjust for, especially at the college level, it adjusts for how often your team throws and the defenses that you faced. So if you get 1,000 receiving yards for Oklahoma State, which throws the ball a ton and plays in the Big 12, it's, I think, a lot different than if you get like 1,000 receiving yards for Alabama, which plays in the SEC and throws the ball a lot less, especially because they've got a quarterback, at least for most of the season, that wasn't particularly skilled at the throwing part of throwing. So what's more important and more predictive of NFL success for college receivers is the percentage of team yards. Now, I think this statistic is really good for helping us predict kind of production. It does need to be adjusted, I think, for teammate, because if you're playing with a talented teammate, Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham are on the same team, then you should get at least a boost commensurate to how talented your teammate is. And for that, I usually adjust for draft position. And it needs to be adjusted for age. The younger you are, the less your market share can be, and it still be impressive or effective. And there's another stat that basically compares that uses breakout age. But for here, we're just going to focus on market share. General rule of thumb: 32% is pretty good for a receiver prospect.
32.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you still want to adjust it. I don't have the adjusted numbers in front of me, but I looked up wide receiver market share. And this guy that we ended up watching plays in the Ivy League. We saw him in the Senior Bowl. I think he got some oohs and ahs. Emery Hunt at Football Game Plan tuned us into him. Justin Watson has the highest receiving market share of any receiver in this draft that I think conceivably has a shot of being drafted at 51%.
Yeah. It seems like a lot.
Insane. Yeah, it's a ton.
Wow.
You don't really find that from year to year. Occasionally you'll find your Georgia Tech guys like Darren Waller will get it. But for guys that like were in an offense that at least had 2,000 total receiving yards to go around, Justin Watson did really well. Second is a guy that could go in the first round, the guy that we were just asked about, DJ Moore. Tons of reasons to love him. For some reason, he wasn't on Luke's wide receiver big board when we looked over it.
What?
Yeah, take a look.
He's on what? Are you sure you didn't miss him?
He's on the consensus big board that we put together, but he's not in the positional rankings.
All positional rankings, correct.
Yeah, he's not a top 5 receiver for you. I don't know why. Anyway, while Luke checks that out, that's I think this is a pretty good heuristic. I think DJ Moore then has an argument for having a higher probability of doing well than someone kind of later on that could be a first-round pick. Your James Washingtons or Marcel Aitman. Again, you have to adjust kind of for the fact that there's 2 of them and they could both do well. Or Quadri Henderson's supposed to be a late-round pick, Ray McLeod a late-round pick. You can compare it to late-round pick like Justin Watson or Cedric Wilson, who also had a really high market share, 41%. I think this is also really good at finding your undrafted guys. People with really high market share are people like Trey Quinn at SMU. We saw him work out at the Combine. People like Richie James Jr. at Middle Tennessee. People like Jake Weineke at South Dakota State.
I'm Rich James.
Weineke's probably going to get drafted, actually. But those
I
are
hope
all guys
Weineke
who
gets drafted.
Yeah.
So Goddard and Weineke get drafted.
Right.
Is he from Maplewood or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Good call.
Yeah.
Sure.
Of course,
So those are guys that generally produced well in the context of the production environment that they were in. Steve Ishmael from Syracuse, never watched him, but he has a really high receiver market share. So he's somebody that I maybe want to take a quick look at to see if he's got potential skills that translate. A guy that people are talking about, I think, in the middle of the draft season, he's kind of fallen off of people's radars now. Michael Gallup. A lot of people really liked him. I think around the Senior Bowl that maybe he'll do well. Those are guys that are worth taking a look at. But people that maybe you should be kind of concerned about. Auden Tate, Florida State, didn't have a very high market share, 21% of his team's receiving yards. You could take a look at Braxton Berrios, Miami. People looking at him as a slot option. He was being compared to, I wonder why, Ryan Switzer and Trent Taylor. But those guys dominated their market shares. And Trent Taylor had another guy soaking up targets too. They were dominating the market shares. Braxton Berrios only got like 22%. Javon Moore, Missouri. People kind of like him a lot. He's somebody that you maybe want to be a little bit worried about. So, that's, I think, a pretty interesting statistic that can kind of guide our view on production, because it's a lot more than this guy got, 1,000 receiving yards. If you got 1,000 receiving yards in an offense that
in the
got
Big 12
like
with no
yards,
cornerbacks that they throw 1,000 times a year, yeah.
Yeah, it's not as impressive. So that, I think, is an interesting guide. Again, age adjust, teammate adjust, but it's something that I think can be really valuable in taking a look at kind of what statistics do end up mattering.
What would our market share be if we were three wide receivers on a team?
If the 3 of us were wide receivers?
Yeah. Like you'd be in the slot.
I would be in the slot because that way I wouldn't have to run downfield. I'd say my wide receiver receptions is probably better than my or my market share of receptions is probably higher than my market share of yards.
Would you say you're more Jarvis Landry or Jamison Crowder?
Well, I think I'd like to be Jamison Crowder.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 options?
Yeah.
That's it?
Yeah. I think Luke is going to be our Deshaun Jackson.
The D-Jack? What?
Yeah, I'm Jamison Crowder. Luke's, it's relative speed.
Dude.
I think out of all of the podcasters, you're probably running the fastest.
Appreciate that. I just want some lazy fade routes in the end zone, in the red zone-ish. Can I just have those jump balls?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, so you're Mike Evans.
Okay, that's
right.
what I'm talking. Yes.
So if Luke's
you're
Mike
triple
Evans,
covered.
that Brandon LaFell?
No, I'm going to be David Boston. 300-pound wide receiver.
Yeah, he had a
Pre-steroids? Post-steroids. Oh, yeah.
I love pre-steroids.
Yeah.
He looked like Mike Evans, like kind of soft.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, it's like, dude, are you like a Mexican
like
pro
LeBron
wrestler?
James.
What is going on?
Yeah.
Are you part bovine?
Yeah.
What's that?
That's how you get a good 20% of our yards.
Yeah, that's Arif's analytic market share. Get some. Let's wrap up these Twitter questions and go eat some chicken, eh? At the Big Herman, Kuiper loves big bodies, strong arms, good old boys without accuracy at quarterback. Is this really a belief held by a majority of GMs and front offices as a whole, or is Kuiper, like Gruden, a relic of the past? I can't believe the flame-out rate for Hackenberg-type quarterbacks is palatable anymore. Yeah, we won't talk about Hackenberg.
How much did Kuiper love Sean Mannion?
Ooh, I
don't
can't
know.
remember. Was Kuiper the one who's obsessed with Jimmy Clausen, though?
He was. He said he was going to
Jimmy
retire
Clausen.
if Jimmy
Yes.
Clausen didn't turn into. That's right.
right.
He's still got time. I don't know that there's a particular type that Kuiper ends up liking more. I do think that he's really wrong and weirdly defensive when it comes to Josh Allen.
He really is.
And he's really inconsistent in what he's saying about Josh Allen, and that's weird. A lot of people have come to the conclusion that either or both of the following are true, that Kuiper is racist or that he's being paid by Josh Allen, or both things. And I think it is really unlikely that he's being paid off by Josh Allen's
That would be
agent.
amazing.
I think he's not consciously racist. I've got complicated feelings about racism. Listen to me and Brandon's podcast about the difference between conscious and unconscious racism. But I do think that race plays a role in the way that we view a lot of these quarterbacks, and I think that if Josh Allen was black, I think it's more likely that Kuiper would be willing to accept criticism of his Josh Allen takes. As it stands, it's really weird that he says stats are for losers, that his completion percentage doesn't matter, and then say
the
that
thing for
Lamar Jackson has a low completion percentage
You
as
can't
proof of
do
his
that.
inaccuracy. He was called out on it, and his response to that, of course, was that, Lamar Jackson ends up throwing a bunch of layup short passes, and Josh Allen doesn't get that kind of help. And while it is true that Josh Allen doesn't throw a bunch of layups, I don't think Lamar Jackson has a really low depth of target either, and his passes were not particularly easier. So, if you take a look at their depths of target, they're actually fairly similar. I don't know that Kuiper has a particular type. I don't think he was wild about Cam Newton, for example, who is a better version of a big-armed, somewhat inaccurate quarterback.
He did say
like
that
Ryan Leaf over Peyton Manning.
Jamarcus Russell could be a top 5 NFL quarterback and was John Elway-like.
Well, I mean, yeah, but who didn't have that opinion at the time?
Well, Elway, I just like
who
the
was the
specific...
LSU head coach at the time?
right.
So I kept trying to make him tight end. I'm trying to get Matt.
tell you, dude.
Trying to get Matt Flynn on the field here, man.
Hey, man, better NFL career, right? And did he end up getting more NFL money? Maybe not, because those first-round contracts were nuts.
Yeah,
But still, the fact that it's a
question?
Yeah,
it's
it's
kind
up
of wild.
there.
no,
both really didn't earn it.
yeah. No, Jamarcus.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to walk that back a little bit. He does over-preference big arms. I will say that.
Yeah, Jamarcus, what I'm
he
trying to say is
loved
you would
Blaine
not pay him that just straight up for what he did in the NFL, right? Whatever Jamarcus Russell or Matt Flynn did.
Wait, what?
What I'm saying is you would not pay Jamarcus Russell what he got paid in career earnings if it was just all merit based on what he.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean,
I thought Andy poo-pooed that.
For what?
No, never mind. He was just not paying attention.
Yeah, he was just disagreeing with you to disagree with you, which fair.
I love that. I love that Jamarcus Russell, number 1 overall pick, played 3 seasons, was not signed anywhere else.
People think he's broke, and he's
done.
not. He's super financial.
No, that was in SI. He just
Yeah.
He's set up.
People think oh yeah, I bet he spent it all on drugs. A, purple drank super cheap. B, I mean by design, right? B,
Who's the target market?
He's just B. He's he doesn't need to spend that money, so he just
isn't
has
he in the
it.
South? At least with SI, he was in the South, hanging out in a barber shop. You know,
Yeah, he just buys people's stuff.
Yeah,
They don't really ask him for it because he's just a member of the community and he just sees them all the time. So he just buys people's stuff sometimes. But mostly he's just I've got a nice house, I've got a nice life, I can just eat a burger whenever I want.
probably healthier than most ex-NFL players.
He's healthier than a lot. But
Yeah.
did you see him try to do the comeback when Bleacher Report did? We talked about this 3 weeks ago, so I'm sure a bunch of people are just turning off the podcast. But whatever.
Oops.
He did a comeback series with Bleacher Report as a documentary, and he did have to lose a lot of weight. I think Jeff Garcia was trying to like his quarterback.
Which of all people?
John Lucas.
It was so what?
Yeah, John Lucas, former NBA head coach.
Well,
yeah,
but he did have Garcia.
Yeah,
working with him.
Yep. Marshall Falk and Jeff Garcia. Marshall Falk could work with him now. He's got some free time. January 2011, John Lucas attempted to arrange a meeting for Russell with Ravens President Ozzie Newsome, and Ravens executive was immobile for the Senior Bowl. However,
after that,
Newsome refused. He's like, nah.
And there was steam with him getting like a tryout with the Bears, and that didn't happen.
Yeah, he tried out with Washington and also with the Dolphins, and no bueno. He lost his tryout to the Dolphins to Patrick Ramsey.
He did. Oh, okay. He did have to lose a lot of weight, though, when he was training with Garcia. I think he was over 300 pounds. So more fit than a lot of ex-NFLers, but not in a notable way.
Yeah.
more like game injuries. I'm saying like head injuries or like stuff like that.
Yeah. Again, not in a notable way.
Yeah, fair.
But yeah.
All right, last couple and we'll get her. At Real Gabby, any middle round edge rushers to keep an eye on?
Kamoko Toure,
great one.
Obonio Okoronkwo.
Auburn kid, Holland.
Yeah, Jeff Holland.
Yep. I'm trying to think of mid-round guys.
I'm trying to think of who tested well, and I don't remember. Because, again, that's who the Vikings
Hey, we talked about Arden Key. Where's Arden Key going to go?
Didn't he skip his pro day? I don't know. I don't think he worked out.
His pro day. That'd be on brand. Last one at Skull Vikings _7. Would you be willing to trade up for Isaiah Wynn? If so, how much would you be willing to give up?
I'd trade up to whatever 25 costs.
Yeah.
Not a ton.
Yeah.
It's just because there's so many other...
Like a third?
Yeah. There's just so many other guards that are not as good as him, in my opinion, but that will go around the same time that are good in upgrades for the Vikings that the
Wynn's
depth
just
question
solid,
makes it.
man. You know, Wynn doesn't. It doesn't matter what system you play, what scheme you play. Wynn's gonna plug and play no matter where he goes, and he's gonna be really good.
Is it possible he ends up in the top 10?
Unlikely, very unlikely.
Because of the position? No, I don't think so.
All right, what's coming up from you guys? What you working on this week?
More draft stuff.
More draft video breakdowns, man.
Is there a vanity link? Or do we just go to the homepage, zonecoverage.com?
There's going to be a vanity
link.
There'll
be a vanity link and a tag.
Zonecoverage.com/draft. I just created it.
Thank you.
Yeah, there we go. Shows available on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, zonecoverage.com/machine. But for Luke, Arif, and Tom, I'm Andy saying bye-bye. Let's hour one.
Josh Sweat and Kylie Fitz. Watch out for them. Middle round.
GGYG.
Yep.
Josh Sweat.